You, where we bring the small group experience to homes and hearts. I'm Jamie Shaver, and this is my co-host, Julie Van Gorp. And with us today, we have Kate, Gina, and Angela. Today's topic is homeschooling.
And one of the questions that I want to ask is homeschooling just a fad? Because we hear more people who are talking about homeschooling, or has this been around for a while?
It's been around a while. It just wasn't legal. I know someone who actually homeschooled, and I remember her story. Her kids are now in their 20s, but she snuck. She homeschooled illegally. So now I just feel like it's legal and people can do it. And it does catch on. When they see others doing it, it's not so weird.
You know, and I know you're also a homeschool mom as well. Mm-hmm. So as we look at this, and I know, Gina, that you're not a homeschool mom, so we're going to kind of we got two homeschool moms here and one that isn't. And I know that, Jamie, your kids are in a private school, and I've got 4 that have been in public school, private school, and homeschooled. So we've kind of got that whole
mix.
thing.
We got a mix going on.
Mix going on. But, you know, even when I asked that question, Kate, I mean, have you ever thought before there was public education, though, was there homeschooling before that? I mean, when you were talking about legalized, I don't know, how recently was it legalized? And
that is a question I actually cannot answer. I know it's been more in the past 10 years or 12 years that it's been actually legal and that you can do that. Before, you had to kind of sneak around and do it, and you didn't want the schools to know your children were being homeschooled. But long before that, oh my goodness, you know.
That's what I was talking about.
That's like the only way it ever happened,
Oh,
right?
yes. Long before that, I mean, goodness, when the country was first founded, I mean, people were homeschooling. Their moms are teaching their children to read. And,
our founding fathers.
Yes.
Tell me, why did you guys choose to homeschool?
You know, I think that it was on my heart from very early on. I watched my oldest turn 5 and went, I don't want to send it, you know, and I look around and I just wasn't liking the fruit of what I was seeing. And I didn't like the idea of just throwing my child into that mix for, you know,
so you've always homeschooled?
I have not. Okay. I have not. In fact, you know, my heart was there and my husband's was not. And he would tell you, in fact, this is a true story. I can remember the first time that I actually broached the subject with my husband. We had a number of friends in our church back in Hershey and our Sunday school class and that homeschooled. And a lot of families we loved and they did it well. And I can remember just, you know, approaching the subject with Matt and saying, what do you think? And his exact words were, let me just tell you something. We will never, ever, 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 ever homeschool.
Yeah, my husband's pretty much said, I'm not even allowed to think about it. He doesn't even want to hear the words come out of my mouth.
Right. And he's like, so we're just not even going to talk about it anymore. And so that was kindergarten, and she went on the bus, and she went to kindergarten and first grade. Then his work relocated. I mean, we ended up relocating to Pittsburgh. And I guess she was, I want to say 2nd grade, so we started with a cyber school. And it was a really easy way to be portable while he was in transition, and we could be back and forth. And then when we got here, we had a number of other circumstances, and my husband just said, I think it'd be better if we just put her in school for a while until you get adjusted and settled, and he signed her up. And so she went to school the second half of 2nd grade, I guess, and then 3rd grade, and my son joined her for kindergarten in 3rd grade, and then we had to move again. And we stayed within Pittsburgh, but it would be yet another school. And I said to my husband, you know, my biggest argument at that point was, I don't want my child to always be the new kid. I mean, there was a whole lot more going on in my heart, but I just said to my husband, will you just pray about this? Because there's no guarantee with his job we wouldn't move repeatedly. And for me, it was a very spiritual battle. But I needed to get a foot in the door, and I just said, it's just hard to always be the new kid, and this would be a constant in our kids' lives. Would you just pray? I know you don't want to do it, and you don't think we should do it, but would you just pray about it? Just earnestly pray about it and see what God, because he won't have us divided. And I said, just take a week. And he promised he would, and he came back within 2 days and said, you're right, this is what we need to do. And so at that point, we pulled them out, and then my youngest has never been.
Now, how many years have you been homeschooling?
This is our 5th year.
And how about you, Kate? I know that you're homeschooled. Have you always homeschooled?
I have. Well, I did do preschool. I sent my son to preschool, and I kind of had the same thing. It was time to send my oldest to kindergarten, and I just felt called by God to homeschool. And I don't know if my husband was on board right away, but when I hear the call of God, watch out, like, and he even goes, oh no, and He did come on board pretty quickly. And I have homeschooled from each kid from then on.
But did you know other people who were homeschooling at that time?
I had a couple people in my church who were homeschooling. And it was very, very weird for me at first because I was a teacher. And so I was very, I guess, indoctrinated that was what you did. You sent your child to school. And it was very hard to think outside the box. But when I heard the call of God, I had such a sense of peace and I never looked back.
You know what? You're a teacher, but there's a lot of people who aren't teachers.
They make better homeschool moms than teachers.
And why do you say that?
I will say us teachers have the teacher mindset. And people often feel intimidated when they say, oh, well, you're a teacher. You should homeschool. Actually, no. I have a benefit that I was a special ed teacher. So I'm actually very used to teaching multi-ages and multi-different levels. But typically teachers, we have that classroom mentality. And homeschooling has a way that you can be freer with it. You can have more fun with it. You can teach your kids at different levels. So as a teacher, sometimes that's a disadvantage because you're very indoctrinated on how you teach school, and you lose some of that freedom that you can do if you don't have that background. Does that make sense?
Now, didn't you create a program to help people with their?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I was very frustrated. I developed an early childhood preschool curriculum. It's called Ready Made Preschool. And I wanted young moms that were considering homeschooling to have a lot of support. So what it is, it's a complete preschool curriculum, 30 years worth of curriculum.
Wow, that's a lot of preschool.
It's good.
So great.
30 years. It's 30 weeks, but the key to the curriculum is it tells you exactly what to say or do in the manual, but everything you need for the year is all cut, prepped, and ready. So all the mom literally has to do is grab the manual and grab the supplies, and it's ready to go.
So that kind of removes people who say, it's too hard, I could never do this,
Right.
what do I do?
And honestly, preschool sometimes is the hardest for people to homeschool because it's the most prep work. So I wanted to design something that could bless moms and give them that confidence early on that they can do this. And so that's kind of what we did with that.
I'm sure that's been a huge help.
I was going to ask, what do you guys think has been the hardest thing? Because, I mean, for Gina and I, we're just putting them on a bus. So the hardest part for us can sometimes just be getting your shoes and socks on.
Well, I think that's true, and I think that the hardest thing I would say is that I'm just always on. We relocated here, so we don't have family in the area, and it's me pretty much 24/7. And my husband, he's wonderful. He's wonderful and he's very supportive. But he's works a corporate job. He travels a lot. I don't have grandma to call and say, "Can you take him for the night or for the weekend?" And so I think the hardest thing is just it's all me all the time. And but one of the big, huge blessings that we have really found is the support within the homeschool community. I have never met this caliber of people and families and kids. It's just, that is probably the thing that I think has been the most remarkable, is just the people that come alongside you and get it. And everybody kind of has a different style. There's as many different flavors of homeschooling as there are, ice creams. I mean,
Do you
really,
think there's any best way?
I think I have a friend that just said something recently that I thought was so wise. And she said, you know what? We're all given this family, and all of our families are different, Just like you said, you have different things going on in your household that you do differently with different kids. And she said, it's like we were all given, like, what are those cooking shows where you just come out, whatever ingredients you have, you make something out of. And she said, I can't make a cake with these ingredients, just everybody's ingredients are different. And so I think that's where you just have to lean on the Lord, and you really have to trust that He's given you these children. They were His to begin with. And
Don't compare yourself to other homeschool families.
That is one of the biggest pitfalls for homeschoolers, is going out. I sometimes just la, like you can't listen to what this person's doing and this person and this person. You just have to pray about it, and you just have to do your own research and just pray and see how God would lead your family.
And the ultimate goal is to raise children that love the Lord.
That's just it.
You have to stay focused on, what do I ultimately want here, And
Keep the main thing the main thing.
The main thing, because I definitely can get bogged down in lots of stuff. Like, I'm the homeschooler that does a lot of stuff, I'm not a minimalist.
That's a great thing to, what are pros and cons of it? I mean, if I'm watching the show, or if I'm me and I want to homeschool, which I don't, what would be maybe like pros and cons that you would say?
I would say the cons, and again, it's just it's a huge sacrifice of yourself and your time. There's just no other way around it.
There's no me time. Yeah.
There is no me time. I mean, you have to carve out those things. I mean, but you have to be really purposeful about carving them out. So I think that is probably the biggest con. But I think that if you are not too short-sighted, if you look at the long haul, it's worth it. You know, it's an investment that you're making, but up front, it's a big cost.
What are some of those
and
rewards?
So you really do have to count the cost.
I would say a pro is the close-knitness of your family.
Oh, yeah.
My 14-year-old is still very family-oriented. He will open up. He'll talk to me. Where a lot of 14-year-olds are pulling away from the family and they're very into their peers. We don't have that. We're very close. He still shares. So that is a really big pro, is the close-knit, and he's not pulling away. I don't see that. That's a definitely big one, I would say.
Well, along that line, Kate, I would assume that you've also got a lot of great knowledge of the day-to-day activities of your child versus kind of having them go out, and you're able to control some of that curriculum even. And I guess with that, do you use the same curriculum, for example, that they'd use in a public or even a Christian school?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay, where do you get
You say
your-
absolutely. Can you please expound on that? Like, that word's just not going to slip by me.
Absolutely not. When I teach science, I use a science curriculum called Apologia, for example, that is biblically based. So we learn about science through God's eyes, like through, so we're taking out evolution, we're taking out that kind of stuff. Now, we teach worldview at the same time. I want my children to know what other people are believing so we can dispute it. So we will learn about evolution and why it's wrong. So I definitely am very choosy on my curriculum. And some people will buy one curriculum. You might have a kid that needs this math and another kid that needs this math. And so you just change it up. Each kid's needs are different.
Well, what do you do with the different ages, though? I mean, are you teaching them all at once in the same place?
Depends. History, yes. I bring all my kids together for history. You as well, Angela. Read alouds we do together. Obviously math, they're on different levels. But as they get older, my 14-year-old, he does all his school on his own. We meet together Friday. He has his own manual. He teaches, he's self-taught.
Wow.
So on Friday, him and I sit down and I check all his work. So my time with him is minimal unless he gets a hiccup along the way.
What a life skill.
He's
That's,
a
Jamie, that's
skill.
it. That you just touched on it. When you said like having all these ages together, I think one of the big pros is I feel like children who are homeschooled have so much more experience interacting with other ages. They can talk to an adult, look them in the eye. If you look at just the population of teens in general, just looking you in the eye and having a conversation on anything is just really, you can see it's just way outside their comfort zone. So one of the real pros I've seen is just that their comfort level.
Their character.
There are high school boys on the playground at our gym class that will see a little girl that's 3 trying to get off a swing and go help her. It's just, it's part of who they are, and the life skills. The life skills, absolutely. Like my dishwasher went out, it needs a component. I told my son, watch this video 3 times yesterday. Like he watched how to repair this dishwasher. He's 10. He's going to help me repair the dishwasher this afternoon. Like that's just...
Gina, maybe you're going to reconsider homeschooling when you hear this kind
or
of
maybe I'm just going to send my kids there.
I wouldn't know.
You know what? Ask me next week if the dishwasher works. But I think that there is the benefit of having the extra. There's more time. There's so much time wasted. I think at schools, standing in line, waiting for bells, waiting for this, and you're cranking out this factory product a lot of times where there's not a lot of creativity. There's not a lot of room for how has God wired you?
Yeah.
What is your bent?
And I think of the scripture, train up a child in the way that he should go, he or she.
Yes.
And when they are old, they won't depart. But part of that is knowing their bent. And is it possible for a teacher that is teaching to 20, plus kids to know the particular bent of that child, or doing that cookie cutter approach that you were saying there? You mentioned something, Kate, about character that you feel. So expound on that a little.
I think character is huge. I actually really like my children. And a lot of people can't say that, especially teenagers. A lot of times they get to be teenagers. But I like who they're turning out to be. I like the people they are. My oldest son, I keep referring to him because I've done it the longest with him. He now goes to our school marching band, and he comes home, and I just can see, he just stands out there. And I'm not saying that, oh, good me, it's what God has done in his life. But he stands out, and he'll come home and talk about the things their kids are talking about, the things they're doing, and he doesn't participate in that, or he'll dispute them. But yet he's very well liked, and the kids know he's different. They see he's different, but yet they like him.
When you say the schools marching band,
Yes.
you mean your public schools
Yes.
marching band?
Yes.
So is that allowed? So even if you homeschool,
Well-
are you able to get your kids in other activities?
Well, we're kind of fighting that right now because I do pay taxes.
Right.
And they get all my tax money because I'm a traditional homeschooler. So I'm trying to get him into the class. He can do extracurricular activities by law. I think most everywhere, I could be wrong on this, don't quote me, our homeschool kids can do extracurricular activities at the school. Now that differs. Some school districts locally right around me, their kids can also participate in classes as well. I am right now trying to get my son into the band. They've let him all along, all through elementary and middle school, take the class in school, but some reason when it got to high school, they've now said no. So we're working on that. But
okay,
but yes,
that's
they
an
can.
important thing if you're looking to homeschool.
Right.
Yes.
And sometimes you hear, oh, you've got to sacrifice some of these things,
Right.
Or
the
like, oh, my
athletics
kids can't
and
be on a sports team and something like
Yes.
that.
There's
you're-
so many resources for homeschoolers, though. I mean, you could do a field trip every day. There's so much stuff out there. We are not isolated by any
Right.
means. We are not isolated.
Do they get a lot of socialization? I think that's something that...
That's my favorite.
I'm glad you brought field this one because I heard someone
I have
say
to go
recently, and it was so funny. A guest that we had come into our church a few weeks ago, and she had the funniest comeback for that, and it stuck with me. And she said, one day I just heard that too many times, and her response was, "Oh, socialization. It used to be it was a huge problem, but then we cut way back." And I was like, that was just so I mean, it's true because our kids, I mean, we really, as homeschoolers, I said this year, we need to put the home back in homeschool. I feel like we car school, we playground school, we're all over the place because my kids are involved in so many things. But it is that a la carte thing that you can really customize what they do. You know, we have our gym class, we have our speech and debate class, and they're out around all different kids at each event, and they're also around all different age groups, which I think is even just really a whole different skill set.
Well, my biggest thing on that is, as a teacher, I heard a lot about that. Like, oh, Kate was a teacher, and now she's homeschooling. And the socialization came up big. And I really did some soul searching, and I decided, who decided that throwing our child in a class of 25 other children and saying, go ahead, and like throwing them to the wolves was the best way to socialize them? Socialization, first and foremost, starts in your home with your family. I mean, we're a family of 7. There's a lot of socialization going on there.
Yeah.
But what I say about that too is you're sending your kid, and I believe homeschool is a calling, so I'm not saying that everyone should do this. But another thought is we're sending our kids into these classrooms with 20 kids and one teacher. So we have bullying. We have all these new problems going on because that teacher cannot monitor everything in that classroom and teach social skills. Versus if Angela and I have a play date with our kids, you know, I have 5, she's got 3, we almost got a class, right? We can teach social skills.
All clowns.
You know, we see stuff going on and we can teach them social skills. So there is lots, and we have a homeschool gym class. So on Tuesdays, there's hundreds of kids in this homeschool gym class. I mean, but the moms, you know, we know what's going on, and we're teaching our kids social skills. It's you know, we go to church.
And the question is, what does social skills really even mean?
Right.
Because I would say, Gina, as you said, that's probably a reason people will say either your kids are going to get sheltered, you know, not understand real world, and you need them to understand real world. But is this a way if we look at what socialization is, where you're able to come alongside them
That's what I was gonna
on
say.
a one-on-one kind of a basis?
Well,
And
so
Julie-
many teaching moments. I'm
So
sure,
many
like
teaching
so
moments.
many teaching moments. My children, like I said, they're in school, but I just look from 4 o'clock to 9 or 9:30 at the amount of teaching opportunities I have, and I thought, oh my goodness, imagine if they were home all day, and I'm seeing them in all those different places where I'm not seeing necessarily my son getting an attitude at recess.
Right.
But if you're homeschooling, you're going to have such a more keen
Eyes,
understanding of what's going on. I would just think that would give you a little bit more to work with.
Well, and I think because of that, we're human, and it is hard some days. And I think my children get to see me work through stuff just as much as I get to see them work through stuff, in that it builds character all the way around. My kids, I mean, it is a humbling experience, let me tell you. You know, I can't tell you how many times a week I just go to my kids and go, I'm so sorry. You know, will you forgive me? Like, I should not have, like, you know, been so crazy about
Throwing
that
the
whole,
MacBook
you know.
at you.
I mean, whatever
Right.
the situation is. But, you know, like you said, like,
They're seeing
everybody
you're
has
vulnerable,
days.
and that authenticity
It's that
that's
whole
so critical.
familiarity breeds
kids
contempt
to
or
see.
whatever. We're all together, and you know, so there is that, you know. But I think it does. There's a lot of character building, and I think if you were to ask my husband, you know, the primary reason we homeschool is not academic. That's a byproduct of it. But it's not the it's really that character. It's that one-on-one time with, you know, it's a mentorship. It's an apprenticeship of, I'm raising adults. I'm not raising children.
Were there any particular scriptures, for example, that either convicted you about this would be a reason why, or since you started that have substantiated and affirmed that? Are there any that come to mind?
There's one that talks about, the company of fools leads to, destruction. And I think we're all born fools. Why would I want my children, and walk with the wise, grow wise? And not to say that we're all knowing and we're all wise, but we're significantly wiser than our children. And I think that when they can walk with the wise all day long and be around other adults and, not be just constantly in a group of peers who don't know any more than they are, and seeking out how to deal with life situations from a peer group, I think that was something that really impressed me.
Right. We want them to come to us with problems,
Right.
not their peers. We want them to come to us so we can guide them and give them godly advice and not send them off to peers that are going to tell them who knows what,
Yeah, to just help them navigate all that stuff.
Well, I even think, as I said, I've got 4, and I homeschooled my daughter, who is the youngest, and I did so largely because she started telling one of my close friends, my mom's going to be homeschooling me. And my friend calls me up and goes, oh, I hear you're going to be homeschooling her. And I said, what? Because I was definitely like your husband. Never,
Definitely like Gina.
Like Gina, under no circumstances. Yes. I'm like the last person. I have no patience. I'm, like
Never say never.
Type A off the charts. But I say that because one of the scriptures that really convicted me was Deuteronomy 6.
Yes,
And when
that's
we
what I was
look
gonna say.
and we see where we have been instructed to train up a child, and that it is the parent's responsibility. It isn't the state's responsibility. God has entrusted to us, and if my child isn't raised in the fear and admonition of the Lord, I can't look and blame the school, whether it's a public or private. The buck stops here.
Do you think homeschool is really the only place that you can do that?
I don't think it's the only place. And I think it's, again, not necessarily for everyone. I think it's something, though, that we need to at least say, am I automatically saying I'll never because I look and go, I wasn't homeschooled. This was my experience.
Sounds
nobody
super
else.
hard and complicated.
Yeah. Or, and I think what Angela said, let's face it, we're selfish beings by and large.
Yeah.
It's very super sacrificial. When I even homeschooled my daughter and it was just a year and a half that I did before I put her into a private school that was like about 9 students during middle school. And so it was kind of a combination homeschool and situation. But a lot of it, I have to confess, the reason I really had never even entertained the thought was, it's my schedule. And I want to do these things while I put my kids in school versus saying, but God, what have you called me to do?
So really it's more about we need to be praying and seeking God's heart on that
I
and
think
saying,
so.
Whether he's calling you or not.
I think so because I think that he does have a heart for that. I think that I wouldn't say everybody should homeschool, but I really kind of take the position of if you can, you should at least be open to it. I think is my thing. At least be open. Don't close that door on God. If you sense any stirring, at least pray about it. Because I think that
If you sense a stirring, watch out.
because it is a hard, it is a hard issue. And
my biggest concern would be, I don't know if I can go much further past 6th grade math myself. So how do you know that you're actually teaching your children?
What did I tell you about my
concern.
14-year-old? Like he's
Do
doing.
you think that they'll all be able to do that? Like they'll
Teaching
all be able to be
textbooks.
self-taught?
there's-
Teaching textbooks.
I do. I think the earlier you start, you have to train them that way. I mean, even my how old is my next one? 12 is pretty independent. Now I do have to check on him a little more because he's a little scatterbrainy, and hopefully he doesn't watch this.
Do you feel left behind sometimes when you're doing it?
What's that?
Are you ever looking at the math and you're like,
I feel like that now.
I do too.
I have to relearn it.
Yeah,
if he's having needs help, sometimes I get Rick because I just don't want to. That's my husband. But other times I have to sit there and go, Riley, give me a few minutes. I need to really sit and look at this. And I have to relearn it because it doesn't
he's
come.
been doing it up
Right.
to this point where
Right.
you're just kind of coming in and going, give me a second.
Exactly.
Or Gina, you buy curriculum that you're buying curriculum, and like I said, for the math, it's a DVD. So for that curriculum, he's doing on his own. They're teaching it. So I'm not sitting and teaching the math because you just can't do all that.
Yeah.
But like I said, at 14, they're completely independent. You're checking once a week. My 12-year-old, I check daily, but he's doing most of
What
his
does
stuff on
he
his
do?
own.
Like, do they turn their projects in? Like, is somebody grading them?
Yeah,
I
he
am.
does that.
How do you even?
Yeah, the check-ins. You're
Yeah.
Do you
grading
have
them.
do you have something that says
like a guide.
oh, my
should
student
be,
is
yeah.
at this level? I mean, are you ever concerned that they're falling behind academically for their age group as far as, we still do have laws that say
They have to be tested. In PA, your children have to be tested in 3rd grade, fifth grade?
Third,
and
fifth,
grade?
and eighth.
Third, fifth,
Because
and
I
eighth.
have a third grader, a fifth grader, and an eighth grader this year, so
Okay.
I get to do 3 tests this year.
But not for high
You
school.
keep a portfolio.
No, you keep a portfolio. And let me just back up for a second and say that it's different in every state.
Yes.
The state determines what the homeschool law is. And we have a really great resource called HSLDA, which is Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And anyone who homeschools, if you're not a member of HSLDA, call them right now. But yeah, because they offer you all sorts of, if you ever have a situation where you need legal counsel, it's free. But they have all sorts of resources online. But all that to say, they have a map of like a color-coded map, and it state by state how the law breaks down. Pennsylvania is one of 4 states, it's like red states, and we're like the most restrictive as far as homeschooling. Kind of like
What does that mean? Like to be
if you
most
can homeschool
restrictive?
here, you can homeschool pretty much anywhere.
They really
because
monitor
they
us,
really
yeah.
there's a
Okay.
lot more. They have a lot more requirements of us as homeschoolers than
I heard
a lot of
somebody
those
once
states.
say too, like once if you decide to keep like your 9th grader and you're going to homeschool them,
Yes.
then you're done. Like you can't then put them in public school.
Not
and
in
let 'em
public.
stray.
You can in
Well,
private.
yeah.
No, you can. I had to sign this year for high school. I had to sign a paper saying that I acknowledge that if I decided in 2 years to send my son to high school, he will have to start at 9th grade. They offer no testing or anything
Why
to
is
see.
that?
Yeah, why?
Like,
Because they
that's-
don't want us to homeschool.
That's terrible.
They don't want us to
Why
homeschool.
don't they want you homeschooling?
Well,
Like,
because
help me
it's
understand.
all about money. I mean, think about it. I mean, if everyone pulls out their kids and does homeschooling, well, then where's that money going? Now, for me, I
But don't
traditionally
they still get like the
they
taxes
do.
and stuff.
But
so-
if you
People
pull out,
wouldn't vote for the taxes if a huge number of people
and
are not going to support raising.
there's also
taxes.
cyber schools. So if I decide to do cyber school, now the school system loses money. See, right now I'm accountable to my school system because I traditionally homeschool. But if I did cyber school and signed up for a charter school like that, now my school district loses money because that taxpayer money for the school gets pulled to that cyber school.
I wondered why I was seeing all these signs everywhere about PA cyber
cyber
school,
school,
and
yes.
I thought, what is the cyber school? Is it the same as homeschooling?
No.
What's the difference?
It's
Why
public
is it-
school.
at
It's the
home.
public school at home.
But that sounds hazardous to me.
Well, you know what?
depends.
I think there are pros and cons, and I have a lot of friends who have been traditional homeschoolers from way back, and I heard a whole message on this at a homeschool convention about it, sort of like a Trojan horse. It still gets the public school, but now they're in your home instead of you going there. I don't know. I think that for us, if I had to I would have to say I don't know if we would be homeschooling today if we had not started with cyber. But I think once you get it's almost like baby steps to homeschool. For some people it's great and they do it the whole way through. And if it means keeping your kids at home and having the bigger if your only choice is to do that or send them, I say do that.
Yes.
Because they're accountable to a teacher, they're still following a timeline, they're on a certain grade level curriculum, which we don't really follow. Like our
Like, do you guys have to do Common Core?
no.
Do you
Well, okay. Well, that's like a
Not
whole
yet.
nother Jamie. That's
Like
a whole
whole
nother
other
show. That's a
I
whole
shouldn't
nother
bring it up
show.
with
Yeah.
1 minute to go.
You don't. No. But I will say that it's not in the best interest of anyone.
No.
But you
I
do
can say
get,
that.
that's one of the great, we were talking about the advantages, and clearly one of them is you get to control the curriculum. You get to spend that time with your children
Right.
versus, you don't know what might be the agenda or the viewpoints or
Right.
philosophies of the teacher in the classroom. The other thing I think that I want to just make sure we clarify is that a lot of people do think that if you're homeschooling, it means your child's going to get an inferior education because you're not, quote, an educated person. But statistics bear in mind, don't they, bear out
Yeah.
that the
Oh, yeah.
homeschool kids are the ones who really excel academically?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that not
Colleges
true?
want homeschoolers, and you know what? The testing, we get calls from our school to go test there because homeschoolers typically test higher,
Yes.
and that increases their
Scores.
They're self-learners.
So I mean,
They're
it's
self-learners.
really
They
And that's
interesting.
what
teach themselves.
education
Yeah.
really is all
They
about,
learn to
isn't it?
teach
It's learn
themselves.
itself. Well, again, this is obviously a topic that we feel very passionate about. Thank you again so much for joining us here at True View, where we challenge and equip women to live authentic Christian lives. We would love for you to join us on our website or Facebook. Jamie and Julie, and we are here committed to truth.